My name is Paige Sullivan. At my brother's law school celebration, Logan announced he'd been accepted into law school. Everyone applauded. My father raised a toast. My mother wiped away tears. Then Diane looked at me and smiled. Paige can help with tuition. She doesn't have kids. Around the table, people nodded, like the decision had already been made. I said no. The room went cold. That night, my family called me selfish. For 2 weeks, nobody spoke to me. Then my phone rang. The caller introduced himself as Professor Eric Vaughn. He wasn't calling about tuition. He wasn't asking for money. He wanted to know why a law school application essay described events from my life, using my brother's name. And that's when my stomach dropped. The party was supposed to celebrate Logan. At least that's what everyone kept saying. My parents rented a private room at a country club. Relatives filled every table. Balloons, banners, congratulation speeches. The whole event felt bigger than a simple law school acceptance. Halfway through dessert, my father stood and tapped his glass. The room immediately quieted. Then Logan smiled. And suddenly I realized this wasn't just a graduation party. It was a setup. Halfway through dinner, my father stood and tapped his glass. The room immediately quieted. Then he grinned. I think it's time we share the good news. Everyone looked toward Logan. My younger brother smiled dramatically, then said, I got into law school. The room exploded with applause. My mother started crying. My aunt jumped out of her chair. Even my cousin Brandon stood to hug him. I clapped too, because despite everything, I was happy for him, at least for a few seconds. Then Logan raised his glass. I couldn't have done this without family. Everyone nodded. Then his eyes landed on me, and stayed there. Something about that look made me uncomfortable, like I had missed part of the conversation. I didn't know it yet, but I had. My mother smiled across the table, the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile. Then she said, Well, Paige is going to help with tuition. The room immediately turned toward me. I blinked. What? Nobody laughed. Nobody corrected her. Because apparently everyone already knew about this plan. Everyone except me. Before I could speak, Diane continued. Paige doesn't have children. Several relatives nodded. She's doing well financially. More nodding. Then my aunt added, It's what family does. Suddenly I realized something. This wasn't a discussion. It was an announcement. And somehow I'd been volunteered. Without my permission. My father leaned forward. Your brother has an incredible future. I stared at him, then at Logan, then back at him. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody asked if I could afford it. Nobody even asked if I agreed. They skipped straight to expectation, as if my paycheck belonged to the family. I took a deep breath, then said one word. No. The silence was immediate, heavy, uncomfortable. My aunt nearly dropped her fork. My mother stopped smiling, and Logan looked genuinely shocked, like refusing had never occurred to him. The first person to recover was my cousin. Seriously? Then my aunt shook her head. That's cold. My mother looked embarrassed. My father looked disappointed. And Logan? Logan looked angry, not hurt, not surprised. Angry. Like I had broken a promise I'd never made. Then Logan's girlfriend Madison spoke. Her voice cracked. We're just trying to build a future. The room instantly softened toward her. Exactly as she'd intended. My mother reached for her hand. My aunt nodded sympathetically. Suddenly I wasn't the sister who said no. I was the villain who crushed a dream. And everyone seemed comfortable with that version of the story. That night my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Family group chat. Message after message. Aunt Carol. I'm disappointed. Cousin Brandon. Logan would do it for you. My mother. I raised you better than this. Then a final message appeared from Logan. Just one sentence. I never thought you'd be the person who held me back. 5 minutes later, I was removed from the family chat. And somehow, the real trouble hadn't even started yet. By Monday morning, 3 relatives had already called me, not to ask my side, not to understand, to convince me. Apparently, the story spreading through the family was simple. Logan got into law school, Paige refused to help. End of story. Nobody mentioned that nobody had asked me first. The hardest part wasn't my mother, it was my father. Mark and I usually talked every week. That week? Nothing. No calls, no texts, no responses. When I finally sent, "Are you really angry with me?" he left it on read. That hurt more than I expected. The funny thing about Logan's dream was that it wasn't his first one. He'd dropped out of college twice, changed majors 3 times, quit jobs after a few months. Every time something became difficult, somebody rescued him. Usually my parents. And somehow, that became proof he deserved more chances. Nobody rescued me. I worked nights through college, waitressed on weekends, graduated with debt, paid it off myself, bought my own car, built my own career. But in my family, independence wasn't celebrated. It was expected. And expectations don't earn sympathy. 3 days later, Logan posted online a long, emotional message. Some dreams succeed because people believe in you. Others fail because they don't. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. Everyone assumed he was talking about me. He never used my name. He didn't have to. The following week, something strange arrived at my office. A law school tuition packet. Addressed to me. Not Logan. Me. At first, I assumed it was a mailing error. Then I opened it. And my stomach tightened. Inside was a payment schedule, enrollment information, financial responsibility forms. Then I saw it. Sponsor information. My full legal name, my office address, my work phone number. Everything was correct, except for one thing. I had never filled it out. I read the paperwork twice, then a third time. The school clearly believed I was Logan's intended financial sponsor. Not a possibility. Not a discussion. An expected sponsor. Someone had already provided my information, without asking, without permission, without telling me. That changed everything. I called my mother immediately. "Diane, why is my name on Logan's tuition paperwork?" Silence. Then, "We assumed you'd come around." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. They weren't asking anymore. They were planning around my future money. 2 weeks after the celebration, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something told me not to. "Hello?" The man on the line sounded professional. Calm. "Is this Paige Sullivan?" "Yes." "My name is Professor Eric Vaughn." I frowned. The name meant nothing to me. Then he asked a question that made my pulse stop. "Are you related to Logan Sullivan?" I slowly answered. "He's my brother." A pause followed. Then Professor Vaughn said, "Good." Another pause. Longer this time. Then he added, "I need to ask you about something Logan submitted with his law school application." And suddenly, this wasn't about tuition anymore. I sat down at my desk and closed the office door. Then I listened. Professor Vaughn sounded uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure he should be making the call. Finally, he asked, "Paige, have you ever reviewed your brother's law school application essay?" I frowned. "No." A long silence followed. Then he said, "That's what I was afraid of." My stomach tightened. The professor chose his words carefully. He wasn't accusing anyone, not yet. But something about Logan's essay bothered him. Several stories felt unusually specific. Professional experiences, volunteer work, personal challenges. the kind of details applicants normally live through themselves. Then he asked, "Have you ever worked with domestic violence survivors?" I froze, because I had. For years. The professor continued. One section describes helping a woman obtain emergency housing. My heart started racing. I remembered that case. The late-night calls, the paperwork, the months of support. Then Professor Vaughn said, "The applicant describes it as a personal experience." The applicant, my brother. I suddenly felt sick. Professor Vaughn wouldn't send me the application. University policy prevented that, but he read several passages aloud. Each one sounded familiar. Too familiar. Not Logan's life. Mine. Events I'd experienced. Stories I'd lived. Challenges I'd faced. And somehow they were appearing under my brother's name. After the call, I opened old files, volunteer records, case notes, training certificates. Then I found something strange. A folder had recently been accessed. Very recently. The access log showed a familiar email address. Logan's. My pulse quickened. Years earlier, I'd shared a family Google Drive account, mostly for photos, holiday recipes, random documents. I hadn't used it in ages, but the access history remained, and Logan had downloaded multiple files, my volunteer records, my old essays, even my professional resume, months before applying to law school. Then I found another download, a recommendation letter draft, one I'd written years ago for a colleague. The wording felt familiar. Too familiar. Because Professor Vaughn had quoted nearly identical language during our call. Logan hadn't just borrowed my experiences, he'd borrowed my words. That night I couldn't sleep, so I kept digging. Then I found an email chain, buried in an old account. Attached was a payment receipt. Professional writing services. Amount, $2,400. Description, application package development. I stared at the screen. A ghostwriter. Logan had hired a ghostwriter. The more I looked, the clearer everything became. My volunteer history, my work experiences, my essays, my recommendation drafts, all downloaded, all copied, all collected months before his application. This wasn't inspiration. It wasn't admiration. It was construction. Someone had built an application using pieces of my life. Then I found the message that changed everything. An email between Logan and my mother. The subject line, application materials. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Because attached to the message was a college essay I wrote when I was 20, a personal essay about overcoming hardship. An essay I'd never shared with Logan. Then my mother's reply appeared underneath. Use whatever helps you get accepted. I read that sentence 3 times, because suddenly this wasn't just my brother's deception. My family knew, and they helped him do it. I sat staring at my mother's email for almost an hour. One sentence kept replaying in my head. Use whatever helps you get accepted. Not, tell the truth. Not, work harder. Not, earn it. Use whatever helps. That was the moment I stopped seeing this as Logan's lie. It was a family project. I wanted to believe my father didn't know. I needed to believe it. Then I found another email. This one included him. Logan had written, "Do you think Paige will notice?" A few hours later, my father replied, "She won't go looking for problems." I stared at the screen. My chest tightened. Because he knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Then I discovered something even stranger. The scholarship Logan claimed he received didn't exist, not the way he'd described it. For weeks, relatives kept saying, he's already paying part of it himself. He earned a scholarship. He only needs a little help. So I called the financial aid office. What I learned changed everything. Logan had not received a scholarship, not a real one. He'd received a temporary merit review notice, a possibility. Nothing guaranteed, nothing awarded, nothing official. Yet my family had been presenting it as confirmed money. Because if relatives believed Logan was already contributing, my refusal looked worse. Then another detail surfaced. The tuition office already expected payment. A large payment. And according to their notes, a family sponsor had been discussed repeatedly. Not by me, by my parents, without my permission. Again. 3 days later, my mother called. Her voice was unusually sweet. "We should all attend Logan's orientation." I almost laughed. Every family ambush in history begins with those words. Then she added, "Let's put all this behind us." I knew better. 3 weeks later, Logan invited everyone to his law school orientation. My parents called it a fresh start. I called it suspicious. When I arrived, relatives were already gathered in a conference room near the admissions building. Logan looked confident. My mother looked relieved. Then I noticed something strange. Everyone expected me to say something, approve something, fix something. For the second time in months, a decision had already been made without me. Only this time, I came prepared. As relatives gathered around Logan, the pressure started immediately. My aunt asked whether I'd reconsidered. My cousin mentioned tuition again. My mother kept smiling nervously. Nobody wanted answers. They wanted compliance, and that told me everything. Logan looked exhausted. Or at least he wanted everyone to think he did. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "I'm just trying to build a future." My aunt immediately started crying. My mother squeezed his hand. The performance was working. On everyone except me. Have you ever walked into a situation and realized everyone expected you to say yes before you even sat down? Comment. The decision was already made. Finally, Logan looked directly at me and said, "You're ruining my future." The room went silent. Everyone waited for my answer. Instead, I opened my laptop, then connected it to the television mounted on the wall. My mother's face changed immediately. Logan stopped talking, because for the first time that day, they realized I hadn't come to support him. I came to show them the truth. Nobody spoke as the television lit up. The first document appeared. Logan's application timeline, then the file access records, download history, dates, times, every file he'd taken from my shared drive, volunteer records, essays, recommendations. My mother immediately went pale because she recognized the file names. I opened one of my old college essays, then displayed a section Professor Vaughn had quoted during our phone call. Next, I showed a transcript from Logan's application essay. The wording wasn't identical, but the story was. The experiences were. The details were. My aunt stopped crying. Now she looked confused. Very confused. Then I showed photographs, training certificates, volunteer records, court advocacy hours, emergency shelter logs. Every experience Logan claimed as his own actually belonged to me. I looked at my brother. "How many domestic violence survivors have you worked with?" He didn't answer, because he couldn't. Then came the invoice. Professional writing services, $2,400. The room became silent. I enlarged the payment details, then displayed the attached project description. Application development package. My father slowly sat back in his chair, because even he couldn't explain this away. Then I opened the email, the one from my mother. The room read it together. Use whatever helps you get accepted. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Nobody defended it. For the first time that day, my mother had no explanation. Logan's girlfriend Madison stared at the television, then at Logan, then back at the screen. For almost a minute she said nothing. Finally she stood up. "Did you tell me those stories were yours?" Logan looked down. That was enough. Madison grabbed her purse and left. The front door slammed behind her. Nobody followed. I opened my final folder. Professor Vaughn's email. The formal review notice. The law school had begun investigating the application. Enrollment was paused. Admission status was under review. The room exploded. My mother started crying. My aunt gasped. Logan jumped to his feet, then pointed at me. "This is your fault." I almost laughed. Because it wasn't. It was his. 3 days later, the phone calls started. My mother, my father, my aunt, even Logan. Everyone wanted the same thing. A statement, a correction, a misunderstanding. They wanted me to tell the school everything was fine, that nobody lied, that nobody cheated, that nobody stole. I refused, because none of those things were true. Months later, Logan finally called again. This time, his voice sounded different, smaller, defeated. Then he asked, "Will you help me appeal?" The silence between us felt enormous. Finally, I answered, "No." He sighed, then asked why. The answer came easily. Because I'd been carrying it for months. "I wasn't refusing to fund your law degree." Silence. "I was refusing to fund a lie." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then the call ended. That was the last conversation we had. People think revenge is about punishment. Mine wasn't. I didn't destroy Logan's future. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. For years, my family treated my success like a resource they could spend. My time, my money, my forgiveness, all of it. Then I finally stopped saying yes. They said I didn't have children, so my future belonged to the family. But the truth was much simpler. I wasn't refusing to raise a lawyer. I was finally refusing to raise grown adults.